Praise the Lord, everyone. First and foremost, giving honor to God, who's the head of my life, to my leaders, apostle, and tears, and jump right into this video. And I'll be coming from Esther 7. So the king and Haman went to Queen Esther's banquet, and as they were drinking wine, on the second day, the king again asked Queen Esther, "What is your petition? It will be given you. What is your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be granted." Then Queen Esther answered, "If I have found favor with you, your majesty, and if it pleases you, grant me my life. This is my petition, and spare my people. This is my request. For I and my people have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated. If we had merely been sold as male and female slaves, I would have kept quiet, because no such distress would justify disturbing the king." King Xerxes asked Queen Esther, "Who is he? Where is he, the man who has dared to do such a thing?" Esther said, "An adversary, an enemy, this vile Haman." Then Haman was terrified before the king and queen. The king got up in rage, left his wine, and went out into the palace garden. But Haman realized that the king had already decided his fate, stayed behind to beg Queen Esther for his life. Just as the king returned from palace garden, the banquet hall, Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was reclining. The king exclaimed, "Will he even molest the queen while she is in the house? While she is with me in the house?" As soon as the word left the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face, and Harbona, one of the eunuchs attendant the king, said, "A pole reaching to a height of 50 cubits stands by Haman's house. He had it set up for Mordecai, who spoke up to help the king." The king said, "Impale him on it." So they impaled Haman on the pole he had set up for Mordecai. Then the king's fury subsided. The enemy will use whoever and whatever that makes themselves available, and it will be the ones closest to us or people we don't even know. But in order to not fall into the enemy's traps or schemes he has set for us by keeping our eyes on God. He comes to steal, to kill, and destroy. The trap that people lay for you, they themselves will fall into it. They will reap what they have sown. As long as we keep our focus on God, he will contend with those that contend with us, and he will fight those that fight against us. He will redeem and fight our battles. We should not fret of evildoers, but instead of fearing of what's being done to us or what's going to happen, instead we should be trusting God, that he is going to deliver us out of every trap and every scheme that the enemy has for us. Mordecai didn't do anything to Haman. He was upset because Mordecai didn't, bow to him or pay him any homage whenever he was out in the city. And when people see that you are different, they feel threatened, or when you don't follow up with them, they feel some type of way. At my job, I have people I work with every day that all they do is just talk about each other, throw each other under the bus to get one another fired. But as it says in Proverbs 26 and 27, whoever digs a pit will fall into it, and he who rolls a stone will have it rolled back on him. A lying tongue hates those who are crushed by it, and a flattering mouth works ruin. People and even the enemy must know that God sits high and looks low. He sees all malicious plots. In the story of Joseph, and the story of Daniel in the lion's den, the story of David and the Goliath, and the story of Haman and the gallows. You see at the end, God blesses them and raises them up in the presence of their enemies. As the wicked thought evil and schemed evil against them, God turned it around for their good and prevailed for them. He used the wicked actions to elevate them. Even when we are surrounded by our enemies on every side and don't even know who they are, God will always make provision for us and will allow us to be blessed right in front of the people that meant evil against us. As long as we keep doing for God and doing his will, the traps, the schemes of the enemy will have no effect. In Psalms 141 and 10, it says, "Let the wicked fall into their own nets while I pass by in safety." Despite the traps and schemes, God's divine justice and power will prevail against it all. Pray my stay in the Lord. Thank you.